times fast. It's one of those names, it takes a while to get it, but once you get it, you never forget it. So, the Wicked Awesome Fortune Telly Show. My name is Susie Kerr-Wright. I am an astrologer and a psychic medium, and the host of this show, and the creator of this show. And I created this show to spotlight all of my freaky friends, all my psychic friends, and mediums, and alien abductees, and wonderful musical guests that I know. And so I appreciate you being here and supporting this effort. Tonight's episode is one that this was like one of the things I had in mind at the very beginning when I thought of the show. It's like, I've got to do that with all my UFO people. So I got, so tonight we've got this, and how do you like all my little, little friends? Believe it or not, these are all this is from my personal collection. Seriously.
Amazing.
And it's just a little of that. So, as you can imagine, my husband is a saint. And by the way, I want to please give David a big hand. My husband David. And he is, he's absolutely such a thoughtful, considerate, patient, wonderful guy for doing this. He sets up all the equipment and runs the sound and everything, and so I really appreciate him. And he's my right hand here. So so tonight's episode I'm excited to bring because it's aliens, and I spent a lot of time up in Area 51 when I lived in Las Vegas, and I learned a lot there about our relationship to beings from other planets, and the government conspiracies and all that kind of stuff that goes on. So, and not all of it is bullshit, really. It's like there is a lot of stuff that goes on that we are not privy to. As we know, a lot of it's starting to come out now, and so it's really exciting to have people who can speak freely about this stuff, and more people are starting to literally come out of the alien abduction closet. I mean, there was a big run of this back in like the 80s, 90s, I guess, and then it kind of died down for a while. But it's starting to happen again. So yeah, and where I spent a lot of my time up there was at a place called the Little Alien in Rachel, Nevada. Has anybody ever heard of it? Yeah, yep, it has. It's just a little dot on the map, but it sits right at the foot of Area 51. So spent a lot of nights up there watching weird things fly up over the hills, and I was being followed by black helicopters and all kinds of weird earthly things that as far as I know. So, but I definitely met a lot of crazy people and had a lot of interesting encounters while I was there. And then when I moved here to Nashville, one of the first people that I connected with, one of my first friends in this city, is our first guest. And so I'm really excited to bring him out tonight because he is, he's like the premier UFO expert around here, and he's done quite a bit. I also have an intuitive friend here from Nashville who's going to share about her experiences. And we'd like to hear about yours as well. If you have any Q&A, any questions, we'll have Q&A at the end. And you can ask questions and get advice from our experts up here. We also have an amazing special guest who has literally come out of retirement to do this show. And so I'm very excited to have her here. Wait till you see her. And so yeah, this is a really great show tonight. And I'm very excited, and I hope you all enjoy it very much. So, you ready to get on with it? Woo! Yeah. All right, let's have a big round of applause here. Just get the energy going. Woo! All right, so we're going to bring out my first guest here. He is a lifelong alien abductee, researcher, investigator of various aspects of what's known as the paranormal. He's shared his experiences in a variety of media formats: school lectures, conferences. He co-hosts a radio show for years. He's also a published author, and he's contributed to many others' books as well. He is very open in the sharing of his experiences. Please welcome to the stage my friend Sandy Nichols.
I was back there with the spare parts and the props.
And the alien heads. Go ahead, just sit here, it's fine, yeah. Grab the first seat, why not, right? You guys see okay?
Yeah.
All right. Ugh, I gotta get in the big chair.
It's been a couple of years since I've had lights in my eyes like that. It's pretty cool.
Are you having flashbacks?
If I have flashbacks on stuff like that, that'd be good flashbacks.
Okay.
Not some of the other flashbacks I've had.
It's, you know, they're known for surprising you in the middle of the night. So, yeah, I was telling everybody that you were actually one of the first friends that I made here when I moved to Nashville. And he contacted me through we used to have, well, there's still bulletin boards out there, but they were very different 20 years ago. And he said, he actually sent me a little AOL instant message that said,
I sent 10 people and she's the only one that replied back.
he said, are you really serious about aliens or are you just joking? Because I had it all over my profile. And I was like, no, serious, dude. I just came here like from spending lots of time at Area 51. And so we connected and we've been buddies ever since. So, but you have gotten into a lot of different stuff. And he's kind of branched out. And, you know, he was the first person that I met that I really believed, honestly, because, you know, there's a lot of people that go up to Area 51 that are kind of not believable. And, you know, it just attracts that crowd. But Sandy's experiences are very real, and I started meeting a lot of other abductees through him. And so yeah, I mean, how did you, when did this all start manifesting for you?
Well, my first conscious, what they say conscious, everybody wants to know about conscious abductions. Well, if you have any memories of abductions, you got to be awake to begin with. You know, you can't be unconscious. So, but my first conscious one that's in my memory that I've been able to draw out is when I was 5 or 6, and I was over at my grandparents' house over in East Nashville, and I'm playing imaginary war up on their raised back porch, and the armies were back here, and so we were getting ready to go into battle, and I had my little uniform on and everything, and then I noticed something up in the sky, just kind of caught my eye, and it was a round airplane. And so the round airplane started coming and coming down lower, and I'm going, okay, who's this other army? And because, you know, being a kid, because I'm thinking, you know, my imagination's kind of going a little wild, and here's another army, so instead of fighting one army, I'm going to have to fight 2 bad armies. And so, and behind their house, and they had a small house, and behind their house was a vacant neighborhood that was going to be developed, but was never developed at the time. Now, this goes back years and years. I mean, this is like, I was born in 51, so this is around 56, 57.
So that was even before. How many of you are familiar with Barney and Betty Hill from New Hampshire? They were the first public abductees, and boy, they were ostracized horribly. So yeah, so this was way before that.
You know, there's still, people are still ostracized.
Well, that's true.
Because, and you know, because people with PhDs and scientists and doctors, they say, well, it's just your imagination, this sleep paralysis, something like that. Mm-hmm. But the reason I went public was because that there's a lot of people hurting out there. Yeah. And they go see psychiatrists and doctors, and they'll write them off. And so I finally got to a point, I went through years and years of denial. I mean, I was talking about strange looking people with bald heads and round heads coming to get me. And in 4th grade, my parents had enough of that, and they sent me to a psychiatrist. And so for twice a week, for a month, I went to see this guy, and I had to draw things, write things, the whole 9 yards. And my parents never told me what the final analysis was. Now, they did keep me back in 4th grade. And, you know, hell, that was traumatic enough, because I'm now with the young kids instead of going up to the higher grades.
So did you ever find out what the...
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah.
This was years ago. My youngest son was 10 years of age, and he would draw things on paper and want me to build them. So I would go over to my parents' house and use his woodworking tools to build these, you know, ships and planes and stuff the best way I could. So the one afternoon, it was about 5:30, and I was living over in, at my house now, over in Thompson Station, and I'm going, and they lived in West Nashville, so I said, well, I'm not going to fight all this rush hour traffic, and so I looked at the, so I said, well, I'll just watch TV, but I'm not a big TV watcher, and so I said, well, I'll look, and I passed this closet in the hallway, and there was two, and which was it's kind of ironic, but my mom always kept that door closed. But this time it was open, and I'm going, you know, and I went to close it, I noticed there was two boxes up at the top. And there were boxes that held photos from when we were young and stuff like that. So I decided to pull down one of the boxes. I pulled down one of the boxes, and I'm going through them, and I'd looked through these boxes before. There was a faded manila envelope in there, and as I looked, I'm going, what this? Because I hadn't seen this in the box. And I looked up, and I'm going, oh hell, this was this. I recognized the name on the stamp up in the left corner, and I'm going, this is the psychiatrist report.
Wow.
And to be honest with you, I was a little afraid to look at it because I'm thinking, man, if I come up here and read what his analysis was, then I'll know I'm crazy then instead of just hoping I'm not. So I go in there and I look at all the stuff I did for him, and it was writings and drawings and all the tests that he gave me, and they all spoke of short and tall, strange-looking kids, the whole 9 yards, and part of it was that ink blot test.
The Rorschach.
Yeah, I think that's stupid, but anyway, and I get to and so I finished there, and here's the analysis, and it's like I didn't want to, but I said I'm going to read it.
You're killing us. What was it?
Well, hold on. First 6 pages was about the gobbledygook.
Okay.
And then the last 2 pages was this. Here's what it said, and I'm going to paraphrase. Sandy is 5 points above top scale on average intelligence. The problem with Sandy is he's got a vivid imagination, an overactive vivid imagination. As he matures, then this will drop down to a normal level. Well, I still do the same things today.
I was gonna say
same drawings, same illustrations. So I figured, well, I hadn't matured much. But that first conscious thing was over in East Nashville, and from then on it was this, and then I went into years and years of denial, and then I had 3 awakenings, and the first one started in '92, January 1st of '92, and then the last one was '98 when I went public.
So an awakening is when you had a realization that the memory was real.
Yeah, the second awakening, the first awakening was go out, buy all this, go to the bookstore, which I went to Barnes and Nobles to buy books. And I don't even know why I went there to begin with, but then I'm standing there in the New Age section looking at these books, and one caught my attention. I'm going, that's not right. Had a face of a tall gray on there. I'm going, yeah, that's not right. And I'm thinking, why am I saying this?
Yeah.
And then I brought the books home. I was going to read them, and something told me not to read them, so I didn't read them again for another 2 years. I didn't read any of them for 2 years.
The brain can only handle so much, you know. And that reminds me of that scene from there was the movie. Oh gosh, what was it about Roswell? That Dwight Yoakam was in, because I remember he was the one that said it, because I love Dwight. And he said, he was talking about how, you know, they were trying to get him to admit that, you know, that he saw all this, that he'd been paid off by the government to stay quiet, and he said, you know, at one point they were hammering him, trying to get him to admit it, and he's like, no, I never saw nothing, and then he finally got aggravated, and he said, well, you know how they say they're little green men? And the guy says, yeah. He said, well, they ain't green. I was like, well, that was that big moment. It's like, yeah, let me tell you what they look like.
Well, I went through years and years of denial from 4th grade up until basically '96. When I had my second awakening. And one thing, you can deny it all you want to, but it doesn't stop it.
Right.
And you come up with one excuse after another. I mean, what kind of excuse do you have when you find yourself out of your pajamas and laying under the bed, or being dropped out in your backyard, and it's raining, and you don't have a key, and the only way you can lock the doors are with a key.
So they did this when you were little. repeatedly.
Oh, they
So the
done
first
this up
time was
into
when they came
adulthood.
down,
Mhm.
when you were playing, the first time was when they came down and you were playing, and then they just continually did it.
Yeah, that's a common thing, your repeated abductions, so when
Yeah.
it's kind of, once you're cherry picked, you're kind of cherry picked for.
I will be 67 in June,
Mhm.
and they're still coming for me.
Yeah. So Sandy, tell me something. You know, you also now crossed into the paranormal. I just want to talk about this very, very briefly, and then we're going to bring out Deb into the conversation here because she has a lot to share. The paranormal, now that you crossed over into that realm as well, like what's the common denominator between those two things?
Well, I was focusing mainly on abductions. And so, and I work with a group of people, and we all have our own little group, but we get together as a unit and go and do abductions and UFO investigations and sky watches and stuff like that. But what we started finding out is that about 80% of the people that were claiming to have abductions, they were having other weird type of experiences as well. They would see ghosts, or they would be into Reiki, or they would be into hands-on healing, or something like that. And this is about 80% of the people, and so we're sitting up there going, okay, what's the common denominator of this? And I drive people nuts sometimes because I just can't sit still, and I have this super high energy level. And I talk just as much in my sleep as I do when I'm awake. And but what we think is happening is that other people with high energy levels, a good number of people of that level are being abducted as well. And they could be abductees like me. I'm not particularly too fond of my abductions. But then you have contactees who have better, happier experiences. But there's not a consensus. I mean, you hear all these different theories of why they're here and what's going on, and they're trying to come to conclusions based on who they're talking with. But I think what's happening is that who's ever doing this is conducting the biggest, largest universal medical psychological experiment in the world. And
well, it makes sense. I mean, if we're operating on a very high vibration, we're going to be able to connect better. I don't think it's vice versa. Like, it's just my opinion. I don't feel like they come down and they make us have a higher level of vibration. I think if we're naturally inclined to working in that vibration, then it's likely. But I want to bring out my next guest too to join in on this conversation. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She channels a council named, and I didn't get the correct pronunciation of this, so forgive me if I get it wrong, Mashta, which is a gathering of angels and aliens. It's her soul family. And from a very young age, she had encounters and relationships with spirits from other realms and other galactic beings. And even though she reached adulthood with very few childhood memories, there's that common thing again, the answers were eventually provided. So now it's time for her to share her experiences with others. And she's willing to do that for the purpose of helping people understand and grow and contemplate the reality of the mysteries of the great universe. So please welcome to the stage Ms. Deb Randolph. Give her a big we'll play musical chairs, why not? That's what they do in the big shows, right? Yeah. So welcome, I'm so glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
So this is no accident that Deb is here tonight, because she's been having, that's why I wanted to kind of fold you into this conversation for a few minutes, and then, and just kind of give you guys a chance to, give you a chance to share your experiences, and then, just the similarities and things, so. The first thing, the first thing, of course, I want to ask you is, like, how did this begin for you? What are your first memories, and when did they come up?
Yeah, it began at a very early age, although I didn't know it at that time, because I'm one of those people who is a blank slate. I was a blank slate most of my life for, 13, 14, and then slowly more memories. As I got older, I had more memories of things in junior high and high school. But in 1979, which will be telling my age, but that's okay too, I lived in Nashville for a few years before then I left, came back. And I was over at a girlfriend's house. We were just having chili dogs, and I remember that because the night was so significant. It was just a normal night. And she went out to feed her dogs when we got through eating. She had a couple of golden retrievers. And she was out there, I was picking up the plates, and she walked in the house without saying a word and just waved at me. So I followed her through the garage outside, and she just pointed up. There was this huge ship, nice rotating bright lights. We just stared. There were no words, we were frozen in place. And so we get back in, she says, what do we do? And I said, what do you mean, what do we do? I said, you don't call the police because wacko wacko. After a few minutes of sort of letting it absorb, she called her parents, who also lived in the Nashville area. Her dad said, you're right, you don't want to call the police, but I'll tell you something funny. He said, your sister called us, because he asked her when it happened. He said, your sister just hung up, she was in Atlanta, and she saw the same thing. And this, at that point, was when I started getting a few memories of things like being 5, 6 years old and seeing a man's face in my brother's bedroom window from the outside, running and telling my parents, there's a man outside the peeking. Dad goes, oh, they're called peeping toms. Casual. Shut her down. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh my goodness.
So I knew that things were strange,
Yeah.
and then I would have dreams that would prompt me to question what was going on. Fortunately, one of my brothers, when we were young, he had the memory still. They had not quite managed to erase his, and it messed him up, to be quite honest with you. He ended up being really messed up and through life. And he told me, he said, do you not remember? And then I said, well, my dream was, he says, no, that's a memory. We lived in what's now known as West Knoxville. At the time, it was country, very close to Oak Ridge Laboratories. And we had a very close relative that worked for Lockheed Boeing. And if y'all ever watch Ancient Aliens, you probably have heard that it's not an unusual theory to say that there has been alien communication and working working together with the aeronautics industry. One of my brothers got very, very ill, went into a coma, and he was supposed to die. I mean, it was that simple. He was a 10-year-old boy that just one day, when he was brought in the house, we were all outside playing, he was brought in the house and my mom's holding something for him. He was just throwing up, just headache, throwing up, didn't know what was going on. And I stopped at the door, I said, it's in his head. Oh, I got sent away, but what they didn't understand, I wasn't saying he was hypochondriac or creating it, he'd had a brain hemorrhage. So this caused problems for my parents. They didn't know what to do with me, but they did know that there was something strange about their daughter, that they could, ultimately, a proposition was presented to them, and I do not blame them one bit, once I reflect back on it as a mother myself, that their son could be all right if they agreed to let a couple of their children participate in some
in the healing.
experimentation with the otherworldlies.
You see the commonalities here? And this was one of the things when I first met Sandy that was so mind-blowing. There were these people that we'd meet out in this area and you know, just gather and talk, and he put this group together, and everyone that joined that group, everyone that came in had similar stories, and they had not met each other before. So it's really, so hold that thought, guys, because what I want to do right now is want to get some music going here, and then we're going to continue this conversation with you guys, and so let's get this, whoops, the thing keeps going off here. Want to make sure I get her intro right. So, because we got some music, we're going to shake up the energy in here a little bit, and then we're going to get back to this conversation with you guys, because I have so many questions for you. But as I said, our musical guest tonight came out of retirement for this, and I just adore her for doing this. She is the toast of country music. She is a renowned singer, songwriter, comedian, actress, model, MC, DJ, comedy writer, producer, and promoter. Swear to God, she really does all that. She's amazing. She has made appearances on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, the Jon Stewart Show, the Late Mr. Pete Show, the Extreme Gong Show. I didn't know about that one. The Marty Stewart Show, CNT's Countdown 2000, the Bat Poet Show, some of her films that she's been in, her Bugbuster, Dear Mr. Cash, My Next Funeral, Lucy's Dream, and Angel Food. You guys are in for a mega frickin' treat. You're gonna love her. Please welcome to the stage Miss Melba Toast.
Now, can I do it without, or do I?
You can do it. You can do whatever you want.
Oh, okay, okay.
And with that hair.
I don't want anything get in the way of my ensemble. Everybody's seeing this. All right. So,
Ready?
yeah, we're ready.
I'm doing something.
I go out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just like I like to do. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for UFOs. I walk for miles along the highway, well that's just my way of saying how they do. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for UFOs. Woo! I stop and see a little fella looking kinda yellow. Looks like he's fixing to cry. He said, please, pretty Melba, take me home with you, or else I fear I may die. So we went out walking after midnight, out in the moonlight, just like we like to do. We went out walking after midnight, searching for UFOs. So then I took him home with me, made a big pot of tea, promptly put him to bed. And when he got better, what else?
Get better.
He got better. Oh my God, I forgot the word. He asked me to wed. So we go out walking, sorry, after midnight, in the moonlight, just like we like to do. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for UFOs. And Bob Collins, who is my former band leader. So,
You want to come? You
Okay,
come on,
all
join
right.
us.
Did
and
you make that
have a
dress?
seat?
yes, yes.
Oh my God.
That's right.
I was watching one of Melba's videos on Yahoo, and I love the one you did. What's it called? The Iron and
Oh,
Word
yeah.
rap
Oh,
or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
Uh-huh.
That was a hoot.
Thank you very much.
That was a-
Thank you.
So want to just kind of, we're just going to kind of sit and kind of go through some stuff. I have some more direct questions for you guys though. So one of them that I wanted to ask you about, Deb, was there like a, I was saying that it was real hard. I met a lot of people up at Area 51 that were, some of them were believable and some of them weren't. I mean, it's just kind of that way. But at what point did you actually really believe that this was a thing, this was happening?
Oh. I think probably that, I was never one who thought people were, I knew that they were exaggerators, just like there are in anything, and that there were people who wanted the spotlight. But I realized, oh gosh, probably, it was in my 20s when it was like, you just can't say it's not true anymore, because I was seeing things, I was having experiences, and I had to at least find a few people to share it with, and I kept it shut down for the longest time. But it was sort of like as I expanded my spiritual practice, it also enabled me to be more accepting, to the point I was going to people going, okay, what's the difference in aliens and angels? And they go, I don't know why. And I said, no, it's a real question. And things of that nature. There was one journey one time several years ago that, and for those of you who don't know, it's similar to meditation, but you deliberately want to go somewhere. Have your guides take you somewhere, or go wherever they want you to go. So it's an experience type thing. And this is where you might want to put me on the wacky calendar, but I am a fully functional individual with a full-time job, and have raised a daughter who is considered quite normal. But one of my journeys, I saw this beautiful light, and I started going towards it, and it resembled to me like a cross. I thought, this can't be true. I do not want to see Jesus nailed up on the cross. I just don't want to see that. As I got closer, though, I realized the light was behind, and it was Jesus, as I would imagine him to be, standing with his arms open with bright light behind him. And I said, she just can't be. He said, what? I said, me? I said, I'm not exactly someone who's visiting the buildings. And I said, I'm not exactly what you call mainstream Christian. He said, even better. And I said, I don't understand. And the message I got was, he was a prototype, that he was, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but I think that this goes in line if people can open their biblical knowledge a little bit wider than they might have been taught to. For Mary to have been impregnated without have had any sexual experiences, I understood that he was somewhat of a hybrid, that he had been given these gifts of healing and these powers that he had, because he was such a pure 50-50, maybe even, Mary had to give at least 50 of it, and that as that prototype, because people in that day and time didn't know how to accept it or handle it, they either hated him or they worshipped him, because they either, they didn't know which way to go, as opposed to that being, this is where we're heading.
Right, but when you think about it, so one of the things about the alien, one of the things that I learned in the years of being immersed in the conspiracy theories and all that was that there were things that blew my mind that like I thought I might never emotionally or spiritually recover from. And one of the things was that we are actually like a genetic experience and a genetic experiment, and that we are being shifted constantly. At the time, back in the 90s, it was 64 times, but now I'm sure it's way more. But those are these amazing leaps and bounds that we make technologically and all of that. This isn't an accident. There's got to be something to this. So and then you're talking about blending in the paranormal too. One of the things that you discovered is the voice box, the spirit box,
Yeah, the spirit
and
box.
being able to communicate with other species through the spirit box. You want to share a little of that?
At first my focus was on abductions, but then and people seen UFOs. And as time went on, a couple of years passed, I began, and I was talking to these people, for some reason I started asking them if you had any other experiences, and they would say, yeah, they would be very much into something that that the status quo would call the paranormal.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so I would get with these same people and various other people, but mainly just a group of us, and we started doing ghost investigations.
Mm-hmm. I did one with you, as a matter of fact.
Oh yeah. And then, but at the same time, some of these two of my friends, they're very much into Native Americans, so we would visit Indian mounds and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine was a Reiki master, so I went to Reiki classes for 3 years, every Monday for 3 years. So something was kind of telling me, broaden my perspective.
Yeah.
Well,
I was at those Reiki classes. That was Alexandra.
Alexandra.
Yeah, she's since passed, but
And
she's still here. But she's passed.
Well,
yeah,
as we're refining our investigations, people are using this spirit box, what they call a shack hack, and it's just an AM/FM radio, and you usually tune it to the AM dial, and you hit the scan button, and the scan button is disabled, so it just scans all the way around constantly, and people would hear voices coming in from that at first I didn't believe in this box.
Yeah, I wasn't too keen on it either, but a lot more people have been using it, and I've kind of backed away from a lot of the paranormal stuff, so I can't really say, but I was very skeptical because you're actually hearing words, you know, that are coming through, and yeah.
Yeah, and see what we did though to improve it, we experimented. And instead of just listening to it, you know, like a little transistor radio, we hooked up speakers to it. And speakers to it. We put a mic that we could pass around and could hear our voices. We did experiments that someone in the group would write a word or two down on a piece of paper and not show us until we're in the session, and we would ask, he would look at it and go, okay, what word or words are written on this piece of paper, and then you would hear a voice, and he would be the only one, and then he'd hold up the paper and there's the words. So we're eliminating everything.
Right. So what made you believe that you were hearing from something other than like something you're pulling through mediumistic?
Well, we've been doing these ghost investigations for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And one day there was this couple, Brett and Gina Odom, over at my house, and we decided to do a spirit box session. And then Brett said, well, let's see if we can. We're contacting ghosts and spirits and whatever.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can contact ETs. So we said, well, you know, it won't hurt. So we come
all kinds of stuff out there, right?
Yeah. So we come up and we start that.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we get these voices that are totally different from human voices that would be spirits and ghosts or whatever. That these voices were more mechanical.
How did you figure out though? How did you? I mean, have you undeniably determined that these are like other things? You know, I mean, obviously there are other things than regular EVP.
Well,
but,
we would do this. We would do this by ourselves. You don't do a spirit box unless you have the confidence to do it and you aren't going to get scared.
Yeah.
And you're basically opening a doorway for people to talk to you and everything. And when I built my house out in Thompson Station, I put a freaking amethyst stone about that big buried in my crawl space right above under the entry foyer. Because I figured, well, these suckers are around me anyway. Might as well just invite them in, and I made a deal with them. Hey, keep the bad guys out, and y'all can hang around.
Yeah.
And so, but it was just because we did it so much, and the voices were different. It's like they were synthesized.
Yeah.
And we would ask questions: Are we an abduct? Or who are you? And they wouldn't tell us ever who they were.
Right.
Because I've had multiple of these beings.
Yeah.
And a lot of other people have as well.
Yeah.
But we would say, why are you messing with our world? And then we'd hear, the response was, it's not your world.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, and we would ask them, how often do you come? And I have all this written down, and we record all these sessions, and they're giving me dates that I've already got written down in my journal when they come and get me, and we're saying, and we ask them, says, well, why are you taking our sperm? They said, hybrids.
Yeah.
And everything.
And that's a common, I mean, that was something that I heard years and years and years ago too, is that there's a lot of this genetic connection going on here. And hold that thought, because I want to bring Miss Melba into the conversation here. So you've had some experiences yourself, right? Or...
Yes. Where's Jim? Come on up here, Jim. My husband and I were driving. We had actually done a radio show for public radio, and we were talking about phenomenon in general and UFOs, and we were talking about reincarnation and just all kinds of subjects like that. Well, we were driving home and then we talked to the host for about 2 till 2 in the morning in the parking lot. Then we decided to drive home from Pegram to Nashville. And we're on
the problem.
we were on the freeway, and what happened, honey?
Well, a really, really bright light came up above us, and it was cold. We were driving along, and the windows were up. And it just happened that at the same time, a big semi was coming right alongside of us, and I didn't have time to roll the window down, and I was afraid to look too much, afraid I'd go over into the semi, which would have, of course, been bad. But I was able to catch a couple of glimpses of it out of the window. And it was one of these large triangular, it was black, and had lights along the edges of it, and a large circular light was
Yeah.
sort of a matte blue.
Did you have any interaction with it, or was it just something you just saw? What year was that?
Oh gosh.
Oh, maybe, 7 or more years, 10 years ago, something like that.
Because I gotta tell you, I mean, if anybody knows about the experience, or there's something called MUFON, Mutual UFO Network.
Yeah.
And if you don't subscribe to their newsletter, you should, because they report all the sightings, everything. So if you think you saw something, you can report it to MUFON, or you can look and see if somebody else reported it to MUFON. So yeah, I was just wondering if you'd heard about one about 6-7 years ago in that area, Sandy.
But the light was so bright, it was like daylight, and all I could see was the light. And I was going, where is that light coming from? It can't be coming from that truck, because it's above the truck.
Yeah.
It was really, and there was no
Trucks and lights
sound,
were
Yeah.
going
and we didn't lose any time. Some people say they're
Yeah, I've heard.
3 hours later or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like that.
What's the odds now, you guys? All right, so, because, no, the other question I wanted to ask you, I had here, was, do the, and it's actually really for both of you guys, what are the odds of seeing something but not actually being an abductee? Are you more than likely just blocking that out? If you see it, it's happening, or what are, I mean, is there kind of a rule about that? Like, you can see it, but maybe they spit you out, they don't want you, or they just take you for a little while, or,
I don't personally have an answer. I remember seeing them at times that they didn't take me, that I didn't go with them. Then there's other times when I'm gone and I didn't know they were, didn't know it was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I don't have the knowledge of.
Yeah, because see,
of-
both of you
of-
guys, the difference is both of you
different
guys have
people.
the connection
Yeah.
already. You were abductees from,
Well,
from
From
childhood.
early
Now, was it both
childhood,
5
but-
years old for, it was 5
5
for
or
you?
6 for me.
Yeah, right around 5 or
Look
6,
at
yeah.
that. I mean, there is so many, I get goosebumps when I talk to abductees. It's amazing, the similarities, the age, and the experiences. I'm gonna let you guys talk about experiences in a minute, but I was just curious if, because a lot of people have said they've seen it. I saw one when I was little. I remember seeing it. I was probably 3 or 4 years old, looking out my parents' bedroom window, and I saw it clear as day, and nobody ever, of course, nobody ever believed me, But I know what I saw. If I can remember something that far back. Now, you always called me an abductee, but I don't know that I was. I got super strong denial, so I don't know.
Well,
You
that's
also,
what,
you
I
also
don't
have
think I
certain
am,
gifts
but-
that many abductees have. And that's one of the reasons they like to take us, is because of the gifts we're born with.
Do you think it's because of our vibration, or
I think it's because of the vibration, and then they're so interested in, and I don't have, sorry to disappoint, I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about my experiences with them.
And that's interesting, because you were saying
They
some
have
of them are
helped me.
pretty, some of them are pretty not so unpleasant, and some of them are downright horrifying. I mean, I have
Most
sat
of-
there with people and listened to them sharing with him about things that have happened to them, and I couldn't.
see, I make a distinction between abductees and contactees,
Oh, okay.
where Deb is more like a contactee and I'm more like an abductee, because most of her experiences have been on the positive side, where most of mine have been on the negative.
Pretty horrifying.
And I think the one reason that is because Deb is a unique individual, just like I am and just like all of us. So if they're doing this galactic experiment on us, then Deb and I will have similar experiences, but we'll have also different experiences as well, because of what they're trying to learn through Deb's uniqueness and through my uniqueness. And I think this is one reason why there cannot be a consensus of what's actually going on, because I personally believe that every abduction or contactee or whatever is specifically handmade for that individual, because they are unique.
Okay.
And if you're gonna do, it's like doing a blind study
Yeah,
and of different people.
yeah.
And And like anybody in this room who's never had an abduction or never seen a UFO could be driving down the highway going home tonight and see one.
Yeah.
And a person could be abducted, but maybe just one time because, okay,
So
let's
you
cross-check
can't-
this
so you
guy with
can't
these
have-
two people.
I see. So it is. It's you know, I always compared it to what we do to animals. We go out there in the wild, we shoot them with something that knocks them out. They see us coming, they know we're there. But then they go to sleep and they wake up in some random part, and we've done all these things to them, and we've tagged them, and you know we've done crazy. You know, I've seen people's X-rays with the chips and things in different parts of their bodies and stuff. So I mean, that's the way I've always kind of looked at it. It's like it's what we do, you know, to animals in the wild like that is kind of what they're doing to us. And when you think about it.
Well, see, if you're looking at it, if you ever see the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, and she's up there and she's saying, well, we need to build this machine and everything, and then you got the people saying, well, you know, what if the whole Vegan army comes out and she says, well, what, you know, it'd be like we go to a planet and here's a bug on a planet and we squash it. And to us, and put it in perspective, we're the bug, they're the people who built the machine. And because, you know, I think back in a lot of the biblical stuff and ancient writings and stuff like that, that these things have been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And people thought of them as gods because they did not have the knowledge. Well, these beings have been, I mean, this planet's only about 3 billion years old. And the universe is like 15 billion. So it'd be foolish to think that we're the only ones around.
Yeah.
So if they got the technology to get here, from vast distances using wormholes or bending space or whatever, then that's greater than what we have. I mean, we have a hard time driving home tonight because of traffic and stuff. And so, but if you're on that level, but there's another thing too, I think plays into this, and that's emotions. And as your technology gets greater and greater, you begin to not rely on emotions as much. I mean, you can go and have designer babies now, basically. That's what they're looking for. And when you're born in a test tube, say their technology is so great that they don't have the physical contact anymore, and they're born in a, you know, they breed them in a factory, their species, then you're taking away the emotions. I mean, one thing down here about having a kid is the fun and trying to get it going. You know? Well,
you know, then you get into the whole concept of like, okay, why are we here? You know, like, are we here to have this spiritual experience or this human experience because we're spiritual beings? And, you know, I mean, that's another whole show. But I did want to ask, I do want to talk about, or ask you one question, and I want to have Melba do another song here. But I have a question for you about Majda, did I say that right? Majda, I did say it right, okay. Did that, when you realized you could channel, well, obviously if you were abducted from the time you were 5 or you were having experiences from the time you were 5, but what do you feel that being is? I mean,
I discovered, Majda is my soul family, and through a past life regression, I want to say around 20 years ago, maybe not quite that far, but there had been issues. I'd already been to a shrink because I wanted my childhood memories, and he finally kicked me out the door and said, they'll come to you when you're ready. So I don't know what he found out that made him not want to hang around with me anymore. But so I let it go and went on with my life. And finally, for some reason, I was drawn to this past life regression. Because at that point, I was starting to develop my gifts more. I'd become a Reiki master, and I just wanted to see how where did I get this from? Because it was something I was born with, but I felt, you know, that I needed to develop my different gifts. So I went to find out about that. It took me all the way back though, and she said, where are you? I said, and apparently I told her I was with my soul family. She said, what's their name? I said, Majda. And she had me spell it for her. Majda, it consists, and obviously soul family means the energetic beings of these, but they're angels and they're alien beings.
So you're like a hybrid of angel and
Or some of both, and some of both.
Yeah.
There's about 12, 13, I don't, sometimes I count them when I go.
so are they kind of like, it's like there's the Pleiadians, there's the Atlanteans, there's that, you know, is it kind of like that?
Yeah,
And
see, and
that's-
I think that
right,
also contributes to the different experiences people have, is there's, you know, we're just one planet, different aliens are getting in contact with different humans, so, and my younger brother and I went through some of the experiences as young children together. And when he and I talk about it, he goes, "Oh my God, but they hurt us," and I said, "They didn't hurt me." And he said, "Well, they said they weren't going to. Of course, they weren't talking and moving their mouths." And I said, "I know what you're saying. It was telepathic communication." And I said, "But you didn't believe them," and I did. So I knew that when they said it won't hurt, I didn't expect it to hurt. I said, "But you were younger and your fear was more intense."
Were you having the same exact experience, the same, you know, for lack of a better term, I know we call it like the probe or whatever. I mean, were the experiments the same, or were you having different ones than he was?
They were somewhat different. He's a guy, I'm a girl,
Yeah.
so there was that difference, but, as well, but they would not always take us at the same time.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
some of it was very similar. His didn't go on forever. And I think he still has some, but
Yeah.
he just, it bothers him to think about it because
Gotcha.
it makes him feel really abnormal. But,
But it's just amazing when you think of the levels of things that are out there that we don't even know. I mean, and it's just, you know, I think one of the reasons I was so excited to do this show right now is because we're going to start hearing more and more and more about contact and about what's really out there over these next several years. That was a prediction that actually Roy Hamilton made right here on the stage at the predictions panel we did on December 12th, and the next day, I believe it was, they came out with the, I can't remember what the thing was, it was like the Pentagon released all these papers and everything, we're like, oh my God, he said, and there was me and Kiki as well, Kiki Dombrowski. She had mentioned, I think she mentioned it, and I didn't put it in my predictions, but I had the hit about it. So like the three of us were just like, oh my God, this is gonna happen. And like the next day, we were emailing each other going, can you believe this? This actually is like, it's going on. So we're gonna take a quick break here, and I want to get Miss Melba Toast back up for another song. So give her a hand, guys.
Well, I just wanted to say something real quick.
Yeah.
I think those aliens were, or the spaceship was looking at us because they heard our radio broadcast and were checking us out.
probably very easily so.
You know, and like,
Yeah.
who are these people?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, later on, Jim and I went to Roswell, New Mexico, and got these great T-shirts.
Yes.
Love it.
Been there.
And we went to the UFO museum, and it's got the MUFON research offices in there. If you go, oh my God, you cannot doubt that aliens exist.
Yeah.
Just from the paperwork they have of all the government cover-up alone, much less other stuff.
Massive, a lot of
Yeah,
Massive.
yeah, it's just
It's
amazing.
all there. Yeah.
Wait, I was just curious, why humans though? I mean, we're
Well,
not
we're
very
gonna,
advanced.
actually, we're gonna talk about that in 1 minute, you got it.
Oh, okay.
Hang on, that's gonna be, I wanna get Melba up, and
Oh,
then,
okay.
but that was my next question, so
Okay,
we're gonna
good.
talk about, because he's got some interesting info about it, and that does too. So give Melba a big hand.
I'll tell you something, when I was looking at your photo on your internet site, I thought it was Susie in disguise there.
Well,
Melba is my spirit animal. I love her.
Because
Oh
you
my God.
dress like a 1950s, 60s outfit, something like that, and most of the time I see Susie, she's dressed in something simple.
Oh, yeah. Well, Susie and I are both extremely beautiful women, and so, you know, it's,
Absolutely.
yeah, we have that allure of the
The
past.
aura.
Yes. All right, girlie. All right, we're ready? All right. Okay. Blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gone and left me blue. Blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gone and left me blue. Well, it was on one moonlit night, stars shone bright. Winds from high, your mother said goodbye. I said, blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining.
about that song that not too many people know?
What?
And that song was first recorded by Elvis Presley, and Colonel Parker was trying to get him on the Opry to sing that song, and the Opry wouldn't let him come in to sing Blue Moon over Kentucky, because that was one of Elvis's first songs.
Well, I think other people did, it's old bluegrass,
Yeah.
Hezekiah did it, and, Father of Bluegrass, I think was his name.
Bill Monroe.
Yeah, Bill Monroe, I think. But anyway, I don't,
Let me just ask you a couple questions too before we're gonna have a little more discussion here with these guys, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll do some Q&A and stuff. So what I wanted to ask you is, so tell me, so Melba's been in retirement.
mm-hmm.
How come? Look at all the credit she's got. That's just one.
I know.
You're still so
Jay
good.
Leno.
Well, thank you.
Well, lost your zing.
Thank you. No, as Bob knows, it was just like a lot of work. Dinah used to manage us, Bob's wife, and Jim would help out tremendously too. And it's just a lot of work, and I just kind of got tired of it, and I want to write. That's what
Well,
so I'm
'cause
working
you
on an
can.
autobiography. Yeah, I wrote that.
No, but I mean, you can do anything. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
how many
Thank
things
you.
can you do? Amazingly talented.
Well, thank
Wow.
you. Yeah.
What got you on? All right, so I want to hear about two things, and then we're going to get back to
Okay,
the UFO stuff here. Tell me about the Jay Leno show. I want to hear how that happened, and I want to hear about the Extreme Gong Show.
Oh, okay.
yes.
Okay, well, you like the
Must share.
But anyway, Jay Leno, there was a thing called the Barn Dance at the Palomino in North Hollywood, and Jay Leno came out to find out what real country music is. And so I was there, and so he interviewed me, and he liked my interview so much that he also, besides putting it in his show, he used it to advertise the show that night.
Wow.
Nice.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that was fun. And then the Extreme Gong Show, you won't believe it, but I got gonged.
No way.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Oh
It
my
was terrible.
God.
That's awful.
But and I was doing my ironing board wrap thing, and I had white utilitarian bullet bra, white slip, just like my mom, ironing, doing what talking dish, and to a wrap belt, and they gonged me. But no, they were. I kind of figured they might, but they let me get pretty far into it.
Then you know.
Yeah. Until I was almost done.
Yeah.
So
How
it was
come that
fun.
show's not on air anymore?
That's right. All
I
the
used to
fans
love to
and.
watch
Yeah, they
that
go
show.
to good people.
It's back on. It's
It's
back
come
on.
back on.
Oh, yeah, I've been
Well, that was one of my dreams as a child. I watched the Chuck Barris Gong Show.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, if I could just grow up one day and just get to Hollywood and be on the Gong Show.
You
Oh
don't
my
even
God.
have a bucket list. You've done it all before you retired.
Yeah. Well, I have so many things I want to write.
Yeah.
And then I want to get rich with a movie deal from one of my novels or something. Or my autobiography.
Well, and can I out you too? Miss Melba's got some of the magic going on too.
Well, thank you. You
she's
can
been-
talk about, say whatever you like. It's
She's
fine.
been hanging out at some of my classes, and
Ah.
yeah, we've been noticing.
Developing a
She's
little
a
bit of that secret side.
intuitive skill there. Yeah. So.
Well, about the last 5 years, I've been hearing people from the other side, and so I heard, and then I heard you had become a medium, gone over to England and taken courses and everything. I was like, I'd like to learn some of that, how to do it right. I don't want to just be out there just doing whatever.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe
I don't want to get hurt or hurt anybody else.
maybe the hidden stuff that you're doing and you're coming out here with now
Uh-huh.
is maybe one of the reasons why you were allowed to see a UFO the way y'all did.
And that, yes.
Huh.
That makes
How
sense.
long have you been retired now?
Oh, just, well, we had actually for about 7 years because we had a daycare on our own. And then, so we just decided to do that. And then we
And
moved and we stopped doing
That
that.
experience was about 7 years ago, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Well, isn't that funny? Look at that.
It goes right along
It's
with
no
it.
accident that all these guys
Yes.
are here together
Yeah,
tonight.
when
So,
I'm doing that.
so the last thing I want to talk about, guys, we just got just a few minutes before we have to formally wrap up, and then what we'll do is we'll hang up for a little bit of Q&A and absolutely some meet and greet photos here with Miss Melba and Sandy and Deb and and me. But the thing I wanted to get to, we were talking about this earlier, is this. I completely just lost my thing here. Sandy, and this is going to tie into your experience. I want you to talk about this too. You had some DNA work done
Yeah,
and had some very interesting results.
I mean, very interesting and strange. Early last year, I started getting the feeling I needed to do DNA test. But not the way that most people do the DNA test on doing it for ancestry, to see which king they're related to back 500 years ago. And,
Past life regression.
so-
I was a
so-
queen in a past life.
yeah, and so mine was more along the research because there had been talk and books written on aliens coming down here and doing genetic manipulation on humans, and we're part of them, and people have heard about star children and stuff like that, the whole 9 yards. So something told me to do this. But then I'd heard reports about, well, these results can vary from company to company. Well, the only reason they vary, but it's still, when you work it out in the percentages, it's still the same, and it's based on databases. How many are in their databases? So when you adjust for the lower database, then the numbers come out just about even. Now, they give you an option. It's like buying a car, and a little bit more money you pay, you can get more information. The female DNA is the MT, the mitochondrial DNA, and that contains 850 chromosomes. And what that does, it gives you a whole lot of information. You can go back from 200,000 years.
Oh my God.
And everything. The male DNA, which is the Y DNA, only has 50. So this kind of goes to prove how much stronger women are. But they're the ones that actually carries the child, and so and everything. So I did 4 different tests and paid for 4 different tests. I did 2 on the paternal and 2 on the maternal. Well, all 4 tests, it depends on what else you can want to get with there, is how deep of information you can go. So I paid a little bit more for more information. And my information came out right, at the beginning, saying, okay, I'm 84.5% Eastern European. Another company breaks it down into which districts in Eastern European, mainly England and Scotland and Wales.
How much alien are you?
Well, hold on now.
That's that.
Then-
We don't know.
And then I was like 2% Scandinavian and like 1% German. But this was kind of like a surprise. And they also had me at 4.5% Neanderthal and everything. And with the DNA testing now and the technology getting better, they're finding that almost everybody has this, except mine is real high. Because the markers go up to 400, the average is 223, mine is 237.
How do you attribute that to the
Well,
relationship to?
Well, see, this gets back to, and so all this is based on your genes.
Yeah.
And they give you a breakdown of your genes. And we have about 4 to 5, everybody has 4 to 5 normal mutations. I actually have 9 normal mutations, and one of them is I've got my mother's ovarian cancer gene. She had ovarian cancer, and that gene that caused that ovarian cancer, I have it in my DNA, but I cannot pass that on to my daughter. I can only pass my DNA on to my sons. Now, but they also have another field for extra mutation, what they call extra, which is actually very, very rare mutation. So it gives you a number, and like T16183, something like that. I can't remember the exact number. And so you go look it up. You can get on their databases and see if you can find what that gene is, or you can search the internet. Well, I searched the internet, and it took about 2 weeks until I found out what that extra mutation was, that very rare one. And when I saw it, I'm going, you're kidding. I've got 2 maternal DNAs within my DNA. I've got 2 mothers in my DNA. Now, the only way you can get a second mother in your DNA is through in vitro and a donor egg from another female going into being inserted
And that never
in.
happened, in your family, that was not a thing that
No,
happened.
well,
to
see,
you
here's the in
born,
vitro
right?
thing.
How could
So,
it happen?
So
this was genetic mutation,
This
was
is a
chances
genetic
are this was
mutation.
From,
So you get a
Wow.
donor egg, you fertilize it by the guy's sperm, and you insert the donor egg into the mom, so
yeah,
you're getting the DNA from the donor female, plus you're getting the DNA
yeah,
from the carrier, from the birth mother
yes,
and everything. Now, the thing is, and this is the kicker, is that the first successful in vitro was mid to late 70s. I was born in 1951.
can say
So,
hello to my little
Who did
boyfriend.
mine? Who did an in vitro or something, mess with that one on me,
Whoa,
and how
son.
long ago? And right now, I've traced my ancestry, you get what they call a haplogroup, everybody's got a haplo. I'm in the most normal haplogroup
Mhm.
as far as H1, but I've got a B1 as a subgroup. And they're tracing it all the way from the middle of Africa. So, and this is on the maternal side. You can't find this on dear old dad's side because it only goes back about 40,000.
Yeah.
So, most of the haplo H1 went up into Europe and England. My little group hung a right, went through the Middle East and wound up in India, northern India,
Uh-huh.
and that group in northern India, there's big legends coming out of the Indus Valley there
Yeah,
of aliens or ET gods, ancient gods living and dealing with who they call the Dravidians. The Dravidians inhabited northern India, and then the Aryans from the German regions came down and attacked them and drove the Dravidians race, which are still over there,
yeah,
down to southern India. And then the DNA, so you're wondering where the Neanderthal DNA, I
that
learned
come from that part, is
the-
that where that was from?